Akhetaten's Gates, Chapter 31. Is it possible that tragic omens come in stages? Had I somehow displeased Aten for it to be so cruel? Or, like a Christian god so far from birth now, was I being duly humbled in a humility that I had seemingly let slip from my sight? How could anyone truly and comfortably be happy with such a grim foreshadowing resting heavy on our backs? In due time, I convinced Akhetaten to be with me. In due time, much to my delight, I became pregnant. I was certainly a reliable vision of fertility, wasn't I? I was endlessly ill and pained, a stress-induced misery. Perhaps still, the fault was my own. Our sixth child was born prematurely, after an excruciating and chaotic birth. As if to mark this misfortune darker on my soul, Troll Nurse died during the delivery, having dropped dead on me quite literally, only stressing the situation further. In a way, I couldn't blame her. She had to be 1,000,001 or something, right? It was a wonder she hadn't died sooner. Still, couldn't she have just waited until after my baby was out? She was a girl. That statement in itself should have been obvious. Why would I say that she was a boy, or he a girl? Her name, placed upon her by her father, was Akhetaten, chosen of Ra. Chosen. How insanely delusional and optimistic. That child was my last chance to keep Akhetaten to myself. It was gone. So badly the birth had gone that I was left barren henceforth. What use was a fertility goddess who was not fertile? But it was not a total loss. In such tragedy came a miracle. Akhetaten was alive. Her cries were quiet and weak, but she survived, and with few complications otherwise. Perhaps Aten was trying to tell me something, teach me an important lesson. It did not speak, but still touched me from time to time. But now one thing was made absolutely clear. Kia was coming. There is no eternal darkness. Even if only in small flitters, there is always light to be found somewhere. Sometime. A taste of mine came one day during a royal procession. Akhetaten was driving ahead of me in his grand chariot. I followed behind in a chariot of my own. This parade was made often as a religious and social connection to our people outside the palace walls. The crowd clustered the edges of the King's Road, giving us grand worship, awe, and reverence. However, there were a handful of empty patches as well. It rested in the back of my mind that this replacement for grand religious festivals was not to the liking of many Egyptians. But then, perhaps, many a creative mind was not aware of the time. This was a place in Akhetaten that was filled with workshops and studios. Sometimes I really enjoyed passing this area. There were many talented people here, and I never knew what I would behold as I passed. Any new masterpiece could be found, like a fantastic treasure hunt. An example of such a thing rested outside of one of the sculptor's shops. A statue is almost finished and was of a regal nature. This statue resembled Akhetaten mostly. At first glance, to the unwise, it would seem appalling. The statue of Akhetaten was quite feminine, and could seem like an outright insult, catering to the rumor of a female pharaoh. But poetry was common and welcome in all mediums. At a second glance, pulling my chariot to a stop, I realized that the statue was not a female with Akhenaten's head. It was asexual. Like Aten, the statue had no real gender. It was Akhetaten, and I, as one. A complete unity, and a human embodiment of Aten. This was pure genius. Nefertiti, Akhetaten called back to me, pulling his chariot to a halt when he realized that I was not right behind him anymore. Is something wrong? I didn't answer him, despite the fact that it might trouble him further. I stepped down from my chariot, much to the surprise of the common folk about the street. I was entrapped by my curiosity and approached the unfinished unisex statue. Likely, when it was complete, it would be covered in gold leaf, making it illuminate as the god above us. All eyes, I could feel, had followed me with great intensity. I was walking on commoner ground, and I was a vision of beauty and grace among them. I'm not tooting my own horn, or anything like that. Those were the words of the people themselves whispered between them. I admired the work absently, as if unaware of the world around me. I peered into the studio window to see the artist hard at work, painting a perfectly smooth bust. Of me. It was I. And a most beautiful work of craftsmanship. "Oh my!" I gasped, as he was dipping into the paint. He jumped with a start, wide-eyed. "Oh!" he shouted, rushing outside. Oh no. It was him. "I'm sorry," I said instinctually. Perhaps I would always be a normal woman at heart, with kind and common manners. I didn't mean..." He threw himself to his knees and prostrated before me before I could finish my statement. "I am honored and unworthy of your radiant presence, King's great wife. To what do I owe this visit? Speak as you wish, and all shall be yours." I stammered. "Nefertiti," Akhenaten called after me again. He had stepped from his chariot and followed me warily, it seemed. He came behind me, a hand ready to summon his guards, which waited at the ready. "What is this?" That poor artist let out a very animated squeak and flung himself flat onto his belly, unable to prostrate low enough for his highness. "Oh, mighty highness! Oh, my heart fleets and rushes to leap from my body with joy and awe." I gave a polite giggle. This man hadn't changed much over the years. I turned gently to place a hand on Akhenaten's chest. "Don't be so intimidating. If you make him feel he has to get any closer to the ground, he might very well bury himself alive. Look at the statue, my love, and look within. See such marvels that have come from his talented hands." He motioned for his guards to be at ease, but to also keep alert for any signs of danger about the studio. They did not fall back into ranks and chose to remain in a more solid formation, closer to the building. Akhenaten headed into the studio for a few minutes before returning to us outside. "You there, did you do this work?" "I did, your royal highness," he said in the dirt. "You strike me as familiar. What is your name, artist, that my wife is so pleased with?" "I am Tutmose." A brief silence, then Akhenaten grew a smirk and chuckled wickedly. How rich. He walked past him to walk back to the road, glancing back at me over his shoulder. "Let me take the great pleasure to now say that the great Tutmose has prostrated himself before me, Akhenaten, Lord of Upper and Lower Egypt." That was rather distasteful, I huffed at him. He peered back to see Tutmose sitting up on his knees behind me. "Tutmose, I remember you. A personality such as yours cannot go forgotten for too long. Come before my palace tomorrow. Stand there before the window of appearance, and be rewarded for impressing Her Majesty. Aten is pleased with you." If Tutmose could grow any paler, I think he'd turn completely albino. "Oh, Majesty, I don't know what to say." "Say that I will see you there." Tutmose gave an emotional nod, wiping a tear from his eye. "Oh, how grand a tale to tell my family! So poor and common, and being graced so suddenly with favor by the lord and lady of the two lands." He flung himself down again, crawling to Akhenaten like a crocodile in the sand to kiss the ground at his feet. "I will be there, your grace." Bright and early the next morning, a crowd formed before the window of appearance. A spacious spot in the front was left empty of all but those coming to be blessed and honored. Standing in that place was an honored and elderly favorite, Tepi, the two-tongued but reliable General Ai, along with the ever-obedient General Horemheb, and the ever-loyal Ramose, the bright and youthful Hara, and even the ever-patient teacher, Sepenptah. Really, anyone who could spend all day with my daughters and still remain calm and sane should be rewarded. Families belonging to the honored stood close. This included my stepmother, of whom I barely knew, and don't think I ever formally met. When it came time, they would be permitted to enter this circle and rush to take part in collecting the favors being rained down upon them. Among these veterans of the window were a humble Tutmose and his family, a wife, a son, and a daughter. I could see great excitement and confusion on their faces. But their faces were not alone in their confusion. The others were surprised to see this common artisan here. The most distasteful of glares came from none other than I. Akhenaten stepped onto the balcony, myself coming behind him as the crowd let out amazing cheers. The three elaborate elder princesses squeezed themselves in as well, peering over the balcony to the crowd below. Well, this was true for Meridaten and Mekhetaten. Akhetaten still wasn't quite tall enough, so therefore was only just barely able to peek over the little wall. I had to pick her up and sit her on the low wall to keep her from getting discontented and crying. She waved to the people below, enjoying seeing so many people at a safe distance. It got a lot of the expected awes. "Welcome," Akhenaten greeted loudly, holding out his arms to his sides. "I welcome you all to Aten's sacred window to receive what is coming to you. May Aten bless you forever henceforth." Mekhetaten held up, much to the strain of her muscles, a large dish. This was one of many that contained the gold necklaces. Akhenaten lifted one of them, running the pieces through his ringed fingers, and then threw it down to awaiting hands. The crowd roared with a grand cheer. The special and arguably spiritual ritual had begun, once again, for the worthy and lucky. Of course, I made it a point to be the first to make a catch. He was more vicious than single women at a wedding party, vying for the bouquet, simply tackling and pushing anyone out of his way. As had been done many times before them, Akhenaten, Meridaten, and Mekhetaten went through dish after dish of golden gifts, being sure that everyone would have a fair share and a fair chance. Even the humble Tutmose and his family danced below as they happily reached for their gifts and rewards raining upon them. There was so much glee and satisfaction in their eyes. This was an unusual instance, a pure miracle to them. In gratitude, they cheered and chanted my name, for it was I who had found them. Mekhetaten threw a necklace down, peering over the balcony to see where it landed, and then gasped. She had just then spotted Tutmose's little girl. She waved wildly with an enthusiastic friendliness. The child below was rather confused by this. She was unfamiliar with any, if any, of which there was none that I knew of, royal customs. She'd never been a princess before. I'm sure she was aware that it was uncommon for one to be so social and friendly to a commoner. Mekhetaten reached up to touch Akhenaten's arm. "Daddy?" He peered down at her, bending down slightly to hear her better. "Yes? What is it, Mekhetaten?" "I want to see her," she said, pointing down to the child who was about her age. "Can I?" He peered down at Tutmose's children, debating the matter. With the harem children of his father living in Memphis and Luxor, Akhetaten had little by way of playmates, aside from her sisters and a few servants. He then peered up at me as Akhetaten pulled curiously on one of my earrings. "What do you think?" "You don't need to ask me, Akhenaten, but I don't see any harm in something like that. It would certainly make everybody's day." He stroked Mekhetaten's head. "When it's over, then I will send someone down to retrieve them." "Spoiled," Meridaten teased, throwing down the last necklace, aiming specifically for one of the children. The girl in question had caught it, snatching it with surprise right out of the air. She gasped and turned to hold it up proudly to show her father. I, however, stepped behind her, jingling loudly, being heavily covered with gifts, and snatched the necklace from the child's hand. "I shall relieve you of that." She seemed to grow confused, turning around to peer up at him before finally starting to cry. This had not gone unnoticed. "Sir, she caught it," Tutmose defended weakly. "So? Now I have it." "Aye!" Akhenaten scolded from the window. "Don't be so cruel. She caught it fairly. Return it to her." "I am the first nobleman to lay hands on it, Highness," he argued up. "That was noble," Tutmose gasped. "Honestly," Hara chimed in, It's not noble for an old man to bully and steal from a mere child. You look like a turtle, Ramose said suddenly. We've done this sort of thing for a few years now, I. It looks a lot better for her to have it. Now wait, I spat. How could even you, a true nobleman, turn against me, Ramose? He turned around. Horemheb? The large general merely shrugged, not wishing to participate in any obviously lost battle. But Ramose was certainly willing to defend his own position. We were all lower class once. People like us may be born to better families, but our personal status is one that we must earn ourselves. That includes you. We, Ramose, stand taller than them. Enough, Tippy spat. I am higher ranked than you, if you wish to play that disgusting little game. And I am a bigger man in stature as well. With that, he removed one of his own necklaces that he had caught and placed it over the child's head to hang about her neck. After a few seconds, Hurrah was next, then Ramose. All eyes fell on I and Horemheb. The lesser general was a little confused, but after a few more seconds, he too came forward to place a necklace over the child's head. This brought a look of shock to I's face. He was outraged. Not only had all these nobles and favorites humiliated him in public, but so too his most trusted Horemheb. He was now horribly outnumbered and had no choice but to admit defeat. He took a necklace and tossed it to the ground. Fine. Take it. The lot of you are crazy, he spat as he marched off. Akhetaten was about to speak out, but I placed my hand on his arm. Don't make any more of a scene. Bring them in and keep going. Let's not allow him to ruin it. I believe a true statement has already been made. Those are the marks of a true nobleman. He sighed, but with some reluctance, he gave me a nod, leading us inside, leaving the nobles and the favorites outside, minus I to be seen as heroes.